Oljato!
Camp Oljato is one of the most beautiful camp environments that I've ever seen in my life. You're in the exciting High Sierra. We actually come across the lake in barges, so the adventure starts before you even get to camp.
Over the past 75 years, ever since Lucy Stern donated the funding to purchase Camp Oljato, it's been a privilege and an honor to have such a first-class camp and to maintain and offer these wonderful programs to kids.
Camp Oljato is at 7,000 feet. It's a beautiful setting, and it's hard not to, just fall in love with the environment up there.
Color guard raised the color of camp salute.
We have a very dedicated camp staff. They're doing it because they love it, and they get the fact that they're making a difference in the life of a youth, and they make lifelong friends, and they know what a difference they're making.
There you go.
The opportunities for the scouts here are great. They can go home at the end of the week feeling upbeat, positive, having learned something in a fun, safe, and exciting environment. These skills that they're learning here are not just to pass off requirements, but they are skills that the scouts can use as they grow to use in their life.
Oljato means starlight on the water.
Starlight on the water.
My dad's name was John Leasing, and he was a Boy Scout executive, and it was the first time Palo Alto had had a Scout Council. I think Oljato meant more to him than anybody or anything in the world. He was so proud of that camp.
John Leasing was at Huntington Lake and discovered that there was a campsite across the lake that was available from the U.S. Forest Department. At that time, the founding fathers of the council were looking for a High Sierra camp.
My grandfather was part of the crew who went up to Huntington Lake to check out the possibility of the scouts taking over Camp Singing Trails, which I believe was a Jewish summer camp. And so they looked around and said, yeah, this would be great for the Stanford Council.
There were two camps that were located on the other side of the lake. One was a camp for girls called Singing Trail. The other one was a Camp Kiowa, which was for boys. And they were separated by one little stream, and they ate together. They had joint meetings.
And when our scout executive investigated and discovered that the leasing rights were available to the council made a $1,000 deposit, but they were still short $5,000.
He had met Mrs. Stern, but when he got to be her friend, she just opened up and said, anything you want, John, just let me know. I remember her saying that. And he couldn't believe that there was somebody willing to be interested in what he wanted to do for the boys.
The next day, Lucy Stern heard about the shortage, and a check for $5,000 arrived at the headquarters. And with that, we were able to secure forest rights to Camp Oljato. That was huge.
That property was purchased by Lucy Stern, who was a major stockholder in Levi Strauss, and that became what we know as Camp Oljato.
Yeah, I remember my dad talking about Lucy Stern, Aunt Lucy. He was in Troop 57. She was very famous to all the scouts. I mean, my dad had these memories of meeting her at the Scout Center in Palo Alto at various scouting events.
My dad had an office in the community center because she had built a theater, a children's library, and she also built a small apartment for the men to oversee that. But when Dad's scouting came, she moved him out and moved the scouts into that front apartment. Dad had her build the fire circle. He wanted that for giving badges away, and she built that. And scout troops still meet there.
Troop 57 meets at the Lucy Stern Scout House. In preparation for the scouts going to Oljato, we have several steps along the way. We have an information session. You won't need 4 pairs of pants. Definitely want to keep it light.
At Oljato, you'll need your sleeping bag, your sleeping Going into Oljato, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be covered. There's what to pack, what to bring. You want to make sure you dress warmly. It might be cold and chilly up there. So before Oljato, there's these pack checks to make sure that scouts are ready.
I will ask water bottles, and it does recommend bringing 2.
I think it's mostly for younger scouts. They might not know what they're going into. This is not really just a family, hiking excursion, where you go car camping. It's all about packing light because you realize once you get there, you don't use as much.
In the morning, we gathered at Lucy Stern Center. All the parents were waving goodbye.
It's always an experience, 40 boys, stuck in a bus together, so.
It might no death.
The ride up there was bumpy as usual.
Everyone's playing cards and talking and messing around.
I remember last year I actually threw up on the ride up there, and it wasn't a great situation.
It's fun, but also 5-hour car rides.
I actually threw up on my friend's lap, which was even worse.
It's an experience.
And once we got there, all the scouts were really excited to get off the bus and get their legs moving.
Depending on if we are using the lake for water transport or the service road for land transport, they will come into camp. When it's a drought year and we're using the road, they are met up at the drop-off point and escorted into camp down a trail by a staff member who has been assigned to that troop as a troop friend for that week. During the years when we were using the lake, they meet across the lake at the scout dock, load their gear up into the boats, and then they are boated across the lake. The lake, when it's full, 15 to 20 minute boat ride. And they come in, arrive at the docks, and start the whole process from there.
Starlight on the water.
So 40 and 41 then were busy times in helping get the camp started and organized and equipped and all. During the summer, I was called upon several times to drive a big truck up there with equipment on it and take a boat across the camp. By that time, I had a couple of boats.
The transportation entering and leaving the camp was by water over the lake from Lakeshore. One vessel was called the Lundin. It was a round bottom boat with 2 big paddle wheels on the side, one on each side.
My dad figured out how to make boats, and people have made fun of this boat.
Oh, the paddle wheel. Well, it was an old Matson line lifeboat. It had to be modified.
It was a big hulk. It wasn't pretty.
It was operated such that the drive shaft was split. The paddle wheel on each side was controlled by a clutch for each one. And it was a complicated affair, but it worked.
Because I remember he shifted it like a car.
It was referred to as Leasing's Folly because it did have some trouble.
One of the kids had named the primary camp boat Leasing's Folly. They apparently in the dead of night went out with a stencil, got some paint and painted the side of the boat Leasing's Folly.
But it was a sight to behold on the lake. People said, what is that?
The very next day, Leasing was incensed. He would not let anyone out of the formation. He said he was going to wait there until whoever did this dastardly deed confessed.
I don't remember any reputation of seaworthiness or lack of.
But I'll stick up for my dad. He got the kids over and the food over, and they can make fun of it now, but it was a good boat.
Starlight on the water.
On the water.
Most of you would be happy to know that all of your scouts are awake and in uniform by 7 a.m., getting ready for a flag ceremony that happens at 7:30.
For these assemblies, we had to line up, and there would be probably 10 lines since there were 10 troops there, and each senior patrol leader had to be in the front of it, making sure they were straight.
Color guard, advance.
And each troop would rotate doing flags.
Flags is really my most important meeting. It's the time where I'm showing off the staff in front of the entire camp, and it's our time to make announcements.
Good morning, Camp Oljato!
We try to do them some fun, entertaining, energetic way.
Do it! Do it! Good morning, Oljato. Good morning!
Some type of general silliness, of course. If it was serious, nobody would pay attention.
Make sure you guys bring water, because it's going to be hot. Be there! Be there!
Show up at somewhere, everyone yells, "Be there!"
Be there! Be there! Thank you! Thank you! Do it!
And when in doubt, if you have nothing, you just put a yay!
Today is away day!
When troops were excused to get meals, they had to wash their hands with soap and water.
Right after flags, the troops are dismissed one at a time to go down for breakfast.
And your hands just got dirty no matter how often you clean them.
And you will be happy to know as parents that every scout is required to wash their hands.
And this was tremendously hard to get your hands clean because people were rock climbing.
Make sure their nails are clean of any dust gathered from Camp Oljato.
They were holding rope all the time, they were chiseling, they were using fire.
And walking with clean hands to have a great breakfast.
Even if you try to clean your hands repetitively with a brush, there would always be some remnants of dirt. They were just basically making sure, hey, it's Camp Oljato, you guys have to have your hands clean. The inside dining hall is really cool. All around the tables, all around in the room, there are old troop artifacts that people have hung up on the walls, that people have put up on the ceiling.
Every summer, troops are asked to leave a totem, a little keepsake of their attendance.
It's like a history, it's an art museum kind of all the troops that have been there.
It's always fun when I go into the dining hall and I see a totem that was done by my troop in the 70s, and knowing that I'm just part of something that's just going to continue.
Any troop that's been out of Oljato probably has an artifact on that wall.
You swear there's not room for one more, and they find a way of squeezing something else in.
I'm really proud of the fact that the token that I made as a senior patrol leader for my troop last I was in camp was still on the wall.
And yes, years later we go back and we look for those totems because we know where they are.
You feel a part of something, a part of history. It's meaningful, has been around for years and years, and will be around for many years to come.
But in 42, Camp Oljato had a short season. Probably World War II was happening. And I know the military started controlling access to the lake. And then in 1943, Camp Oljato did not have any sessions. It was closed in 43. The next time that it was open was in 1944. That's an interesting time because the only people that could get up here were people that had gas rationing coupons. After World War II, all of those restrictions were lifted.
Well, the Second World War, they had much equipment left over from the war. They had a big yard in Oakland, a whole yard of things that the Navy or the Army didn't need anymore. They practically gave it away. My dad had a certain personality. If it was free, he could find a use for it. And he took truckloads. I'm sure they used everything that he scrounged around, and it was all free, so he had the fun of getting things.
The council also received a landing craft that had the front gate would roll down to let the troops exit the landing craft, and that was used at camp for hauling equipment in, and jeeps and trucks full of equipment.
The barge was a landing craft with a nose that swung down. One of the annoyances with the barge for anybody riding in it, it was quite noisy. The belly of the barge, where the scouts would stand up themselves, that was below the vision sight over the wall of the vessel. So they had no vision of the horizon. Pitching and rolling with the smell of diesel fumes in the hold, even though that was totally open to the top. If there was no wind, you didn't suffocate, but you sure got sick quick. And the only solution to that was to stand up on your tippy toes or stand on your pack to peer over the edge.
That LTV could do 30 knots. It was actually built for D-Day but never was sent over there. I understand people actually did get on skis behind it a few times. Every time they fired it up to go across the lake, it was 10 gallons of fuel.
The pontoon boats were boats that were originally designed to use with the Army's Bailey Bridge system, right? They'd put the pontoon boats across a river to build the bridge. 4 of them were donated to camp. 1 of them was given to Miramichi. 2 of them we currently use, as far as I know. The Blue Bazota and the Green Weenie are still up there in use. And then a 4th one was wedged so tightly, they were stacked on a flatbed trailer and brought up to camp. The bottom 2 were wedged so tightly, they floated them both across the lake, and then they cut part of it so that it would just drop out underneath. And it stayed submerged off Fisherman's Rock in 15 feet of water. So we go swimming off of Fisherman's Rock and see the old submerged aluminum pontoon boat down there for the longest time.
The Sea Scouts volunteered to refurbish our boats, that Blue Bazota, the Green Weenie, and then this unpainted boat that for many years had been sitting under the water, actually kind of tied to the shore. And the next year, when the Sea Scouts brought the boats back to us, they had painted them all white. And so we didn't lose the color scheme. They then painted the trim depending upon what the color of the boat's name was. And then this extra unpainted boat, they painted with red trim. So it's like, well, what do we call it? And so we decided that since it had sat at the bottom of the lake for so many years and it now had red trim, we named it Red October, similar to the Russian submarine from the movie and the book. So that's how the Red October got its name.
Starlight on the water.
So the typical day at Camp Oljato, after breakfast at 9 o'clock, a structured merit badge schedule starts.
What else does the Boy Scout almost always have on him all the time? You have a sling with you at all times.
The major goal is for them to get their merit badges. It's where they learn the skills that they can carry in their life. Okay, how to behave, first aid, emergency preparedness.
We're all gonna die! As you can see at Camp Oljato, there's been a sudden epidemic of broken limbs.
All of these things are just things woven into the Boy Scout.
Ahead of time, they review the different merit badges that are being offered and choose which ones they want to do. And most people will get 3 or maybe 4 merit badges in a week.
The opportunities for the Scouts here are great. They can partake in handicraft art such as basketry, leatherwork, wood carving. They can go over to the Scoutcraft area where they participate in pioneering, orienteering, camping, and also the skills required for tenderfoot, second class, and first class, taught by a staff of experienced Scouts.
There's this archery range in the archery merit badge, and it's set in this beautiful place, and you have this serene view over the lake. And then we learn about, archery safety and how to make an arrow, and then you get to shoot. This was an amazing experience.
We even have a unique welding merit badge, which is very popular now. It sells out very quickly.
Welding merit badge classes, it's very, very easy to learn. They asked me to teach welding because I had my own automotive business for years and did my own welding. They weld pieces of steel together and they get to take those home and show them off. Good education for them.
It gives them an opportunity to experience additional life skills, and in many cases it may become a career path for them. At 10:30 they do their second class, and then they break for lunch.
The experience in the dining hall at mealtime is one of excitement, noise. Let's face it, Scouts are always hungry.
Everyone comes in to get their meal. There's plates, there's food, there's a salad bar, there's drinks.
Well, the meals have been fantastic, I think.
The food is actually quite good.
The meals are very good.
Really good selection of food.
Yeah.
Food's great.
Yeah, the food's great. Definitely great.
Oljato's known for having some of the best food. That's one of the things we always do right. But there's a food run that happens almost every day, and our cook spends a lot of time taking the food orders in, brought in by maintenance on our vehicles.
I remember he put a railroad track up eventually up that hill. It was to get supplies up to the kitchen because the camp was way up high.
As I understand, the Oljato Railway was built when they moved the entrance or the main maintenance dock around to its current location. They put in rail tracks all the way down from the dining hall down to the water's edge. After the war, John Leasing secured a huge winch that was at the top of the tracks and a rail car that would be used to winch equipment up and down, food and perhaps scouts equipment, from the water's edge up to the center part of camp.
It was a hill, all right. It was a tough hill to walk up, particularly if you had to carry a lot of food or gear.
So it wasn't very big, but it had plenty of carrying capacity. You could strap on all you want as long as you could strap it on securely enough and tie it down, and away you go.
Then Aunt Lucy had builders build a beautiful lodge with a living space and a kitchen and a couple bedrooms. She built it mostly for the people that volunteered. It was a beautiful lodge, and she would only do things especially well. We stayed there once in the bedroom. The people that found the people to build it, they had a man that built special fireplaces.
I have heard, I don't know if it's for sure, that all of this incredible stonework was done by the same stonemason that did the Ahwahnee Lodge in Yosemite.
The man did build a beautiful fireplace. He was known for his fireplaces. Do you want me to tell about the bear? He had a bear was his companion. It was a wild bear that he had trained not to be too wild. Because I was very anxious about that bear. It was a kind of between a cub and an adult bear. He had it on a leash. He went off, and I was very glad that he took his bear.
I've heard that over the years. It could be an urban legend. I don't know if it's been authenticated, but I choose to believe it because it adds to the magic.
And Oljato means starlight on the water. Be there!
After lunch, they have a third class.
All right, gentlemen, take aim.
Aim.
Yes, we have my permission to fire.
Shotgun shooting, rifle shooting. Your merit badge is very difficult. You usually have to go to a special range. And up there it's just so easy because it's already, it's already set up there. And you also get to do it in an amazing, really pretty place.
Who here knows what acid rain is? Acid rain.
The role of the nature staff was not just to teach nature merit badges, but to call out and help people notice some of the ways that the aspects of nature were working together in the ecology.
Vehicles and power plants, they like to burn fossil fuels.
It's a spectacular, beautiful place up here with so many wonderful natural resources.
Acid rain is acid will come down and it will not be good for animals and plants.
That is correct. You get a chance to shoot.
Steph Curry.
In the newly developed aquatics area, they have opportunities to do your typical swimming, life-saving, rowing, canoeing.
I feel more comfortable like this. That makes sense.
But we've added paddleboarding, kayaking.
So you see right here? My blade's going all the way in, all the way through the throat.
So they had an opportunity to do some incredible experiences.
Another merit badge that I did was canoeing merit badge. That time on the waterfront was really spent exploring a bit more of what I wanted to do. That was fun.
Merit badges, which I'm taking, are canoeing in second period. I liked merit badges, like the rifle and the archery.
If you want to, take waterfront badges because they are fun.
I liked everything except the swim test here. Environmental science.
Take the badge that has the least step you need to do in the water first in the morning.
When I took it, the water was quite cold.
Take the one with the most second.
And if you don't know, I hate cold water whatsoever.
After that, at 3:30, they move into free time schedule because not everyone learns the same way. Some will try out COPE, which is our challenging outdoor program experience, where they have an opportunity to become high-performing teams. for climbing, where they get to climb the natural settings of our boulders, which is an awe-inspiring experience. Try something new on the world-class sailing lake.
The fact that camp is a beautiful spot, the fact that it's on one of the greatest sailing lakes in the world is a real bonus. People come from all over the world to race sailboats here.
Well, the story of the Vicky began in 1978. It's a blue-hulled boat with a white waterline stripe and a red bottom. Has bright red sails, which are adorned at the top with a beautiful pirate flag. We found out, my goodness, you can stick a lot of scouts on there and have quite an adventure and get kids familiar with sailing before they go on to boats themselves. And it was turned into quite an icon of camp.
In my years at Camp Oljato, and this year when I went back, you still feel that wonderful competition between program areas. Waterfront, handicraft, or mountain sports.
I've enjoyed and contributed to the friendly rivalry that's happened between the different areas, which I think has brought out the best in all of us.
We always had a healthy banter between Scoutcraft and Waterfront.
You have a bunch of wonderfully enthused people for their particular interests.
I particularly enjoyed my roommate, Dana Johnson, who would come and have a nap every day after Scoutcraft activities.
And everybody fighting for what's the most important.
And I'd be working in the waterfront all day and come up exhausted.
Teaching these leaders for tomorrow.
Come on.
Maintenance really rules. Plus, we're also the best looking. We were the true studs of camp, in spite of what Waterfront and Scoutcraft thought.
Even now, you can statistically see that Scoutcraft is still the #1 area.
My father, his primary job was to manage the training and safety of scouts in the swimming area, as well as managing the rowboat and canoe training, to teach the scouts, get them to become confident when they got into the water. The swimming area is still significantly the same as it was. A floating dock out on, as I recall, it was on 55-gallon drums in the early years that floated the dock. They had to learn how to float, how to swim. They also needed to learn rescue procedures for somebody who was out of control in the water. Jumping in that lake water was pretty cold. Makes you want to jump right back out.
The camp, of course, previously was singing trails. Remaining camp buildings from that time, what used to be the cook's cabin, that's that old log cabin-ish thing. Further down from the new cook's cabin, the original handicraft lodge, that was the original building.
One of the really neat things that we still have are these old cartoon maps of the camp, and it has different locations of buildings that no longer exist, and some that do exist, like the old troop kitchens used by the troops to prepare their meals before the dining hall was built. And I think even after the dining hall was built in '46, that troops had the option of eating in the dining hall or cooking their own meals in one of these troop kitchens, which were out in the camps. And there were several of them, and one of them still exists as the Scoutcraft Shack. The Singing Trail Camp Kellowa building still in place. That is probably most notable that people would be familiar with is the Trading Post.
Trading Post, I believe originally was half of the cook's building, the kitchen. They apparently had sawed that up and somehow skidded it down to its current location. Trading Post offers things you just can't live without. Candy, sodas, on occasion some scouting supplies, postcards, that's where the mail would be dropped off, jackets, neckerchiefs, all the camp patches.
Amongst the many things that you can buy in the Trading Post, they also sell the latest year's camp patch. One of the unique things about Oljato is that they have issued a patch for every year that the camp has been in operation, or I should say almost every year. Some of the elements that are in almost all the patches are the Oljato pine out at Memorial Point. And then the two stars represent our donors, Lucy and Ruth Stern, who donated the money to get the camp for us. And so in tribute to their generosity, the two stars represent the two Sterns. In recent years, the patch designs have become more varied, although the tree and the two stars do appear in most of them. So we have this nice kind of legacy of all these different camp patches through the year, and those are available for sale on the Trading Post.
Starlight on the water.
Each troop gets their own campsite, so Troop 57, we get the same campsite every year. One day we cook in the campsite. They always bring a ton of food and it's really fun.
You know, we can make breakfast burritos.
Having to work as a team, having to figure out who will take on putting the fire together, who will collect water. Different situations afford them opportunities to really truly prepare for later in life.
I was the fire warden, so that's me being in charge of the fire, making sure that there's someone always watching the fire and that everyone's safe. We always have to get some wood. We always end up, having to chop wood, and I don't know why, but the kids, I don't know, scouts just love to do it. They love to chop wood. Whenever I'm tending the fire, I always see this huge line leading to where the block is. Everyone, is waiting to get their turn to chop at wood. It's kind of fun to see, and it's fun to chop wood, but it's cool.
Every time Troop 57 comes up to Camp Oljato, we take on a service project.
Our troop, and all the troops too, are putting effort into rebuilding the amphitheater. So the idea is that scouts are part of the environment, but they're taking care of it.
It was really great to go back to Camp Oljato with my troop. And one of the memories I have is going up to the council campfire, which they had named after my Uncle Frank. He got involved in helping Camp Oljato in the early 60s. He would haul supplies up to Oljato every weekend during the summer. He was awarded his Silver Beaver in 1964 from Stanford Area Council.
There's a tradition of naming things at camp. A lot of things are named. The rifle range is named after Percy Gibbs. The kitchen is named after Betty Witt, who was one of the camp cooks at Oljato for many years. The dining hall is currently called the Frank Livermore Dining Hall. Frank Livermore, he was essentially John Leesing's right-hand man during the early days. And he was, I believe, one of the original 1941 staffers. He worked in the Stanford Council office, ran a lot of programs and different things over the years. In the winter of 1952-53, apparently there was a very, very heavy snow year, and when the volunteers came to open up the camp, they found out that it had crushed a number of buildings and had cracked the beam in the dining hall. And so they had to fix that. So since that time, we have had to prepare the dining hall for the winter in case there was heavy snow. We put shutters on the uphill facing windows that protects them against the snow. And then there are these massive cables that are attached to the main structure of the building that are then pulled out through the side of the building and attached to anchor bolts on rocks and the granite outside. And essentially what that does is that it provides more support to the side of the building so that when the snow load comes and pushes up against it, it's got some support to keep it from being pushed over. All of the backbreaking work of opening and closing the camps is done by volunteers.
Pouring some antifreeze down the pipelines, into the P-traps, into the sink. Otherwise, in the winter when we hit sub-zero freezing, it will break the pipes. Try to get it winterized.
Scouts and scout leaders and parents, they all come up and they help us open the camp up and close the camp down.
To protect all of our important equipment during the course of the year, we store it in our dining hall. And it is a precise dance to store all of the rowboats and canoes, the sailing boats and so forth. There is a precise way that everything fits together, enters the dining hall and leaves the dining hall.
We have to install these big poles that support the main beam of the dining hall. And they're essentially logs from trees that have been cut down.
We have some incredible volunteers that come up and help us that fortunately are knowledgeable about how it all works.
And all the equipment then is protected from the snow during the winter.
Starlight on the water.
So back in my day, we used to call the day where we'd have events the Oljato Cold Water Revival, because we had a lot of aquatic type sports, and it was mainly canoeing and those kind of things. Since that time, they've added a lot of non-swimming water activities to it, so it became the Aquacade, and then now it's called the Olympicade.
257 guys, play smart. These balls are easy to catch. Okay?
The Olympicade is a small one-day camporee that happens. Some of them are your typical Boy Scout events like a two-man saw. Some of them are crazy, zany stuff that somebody thought of, like Scoutmaster Belly Flop, which is always a favorite.
I am familiar with the Scoutmaster Belly Flop contest.
Actually, no, I have refused because I know how much it would hurt.
I was deemed to have the wrong size to be a true competitor. And partly it looked very painful to me.
I ran for the Olympicade.
Well, the pentathlon is pretty much a series of 5 events.
This is like the big event.
There's canoeing.
And there's canoeing, 2 runners, a swimmer, and an eater.
By this entire time, you're holding a frozen Snickers bar wrapped in duct tape.
They use a frozen Snickers as a baton.
First you have a canoer, and they canoe out, and then you give it to a runner who runs to the next runner, who runs to the next runner, who runs to the swimmer, who swims about 4 laps, and then the runner gives it to the eater.
And you came in first place?
Yeah.
So you give it to the eater, and then the eater has to unwrap the duct tape and then eat the frozen Snickers bar as fast as possible.
And then he started eating it when it was frozen. And they wrap it in duct tape, and you can't use your teeth to undo the duct tape.
It's very competitive.
When you want to train a couple of scouts, look at us.
You're trying to unwrap a Snickers bar, and everyone's like screaming at you like, come on, you got this.
If you don't look like us,
yeah,
then you're not doing it right.
It's so fun. It's great.
So whenever there are scrapes or bruises or twisted ankles in camp, then there's always the health lodge. I hear that during Olympicade, it's a very popular place, but that's just a rumor.
At the health lodge, the camp health officer is responsible for making sure that all the campers stay safe. We have a waiting room. We also have an examination room. We have 2 bedrooms that accommodate 2 patients at a time. It's well equipped.
So, for those of you who are new to camp, this is the Solo Hiker Backpack.
The Solo Hike program is essentially the highest honor that any scout can earn at camp. It's both scouts and staff. And really what it is it's someone who has really given back to the programs.
Will Max please join me up on the rock?
It's a complete surprise. You're given and it's an honor. You're given a backpack, a rucksack that everybody uses on the solo hike.
Next, Oljato Solo Hiker.
There's a map inside, there's a little bit of food, there's some water, here's your sleeping bag. We'll see you back tomorrow morning.
So, he's going to head out that way, and a big round of applause.
In order to become a solo hiker, you get elected by the other solo hikers.
Keep in mind, this is evening time, so it's starting to get a little dark.
You go up onto a place, onto the mountain, you light your own campfire, and you're sent up there with books.
They're basically journals, and people write thoughts as they sit around a campfire at a site that's the same site everyone has used on the solo hike.
What's in these books is the writings of all the solo hikers dating back all the way to the 1960s.
What I did is I went and started scribbling what I felt and what things I had done in scouting and all that kind of stuff. Then they said, at sunrise, make sure your fire's out, collect firewood for the next solo hiker. And I did all those things, got the camp cleaned up, and then return.
And there's been quite a few people over the years who have come back to camp and read something that they wrote when they were 15 years old back in 1972. And those are private things that are written that only the solo hikers get to read.
And that was one of the great program ideas that Ed Wintermute and his crew brought up to camp. Del Raby had began to work for the Stanford Council.
One of the big changes that happened at camp was Del's arrival. He came from the San Gabriel Valley Council, which is running Camp Cherry Valley out on Catalina Island. When he became part of Stanford Area Council, he was wise enough to say, well, I certainly want the best for Camp Oljato.
Cheerful, gregarious, friendly. Those were the types of people we were looking for. And that's the kind of people we hired.
All sorts of new things started happening at camp. New programs, new schedules, campfires became more dynamic, the camp became more structured, lots of things happened. And the idea was to bring back staff year after year. Camp really had a big growing period through the 70s and through the 80s because of that consistency. Over the years, this has happened. There have been many dynamic camp directors, many program directors, council members, scoutmasters. All these have made just such a huge difference in camp and brought it along to where it is today.
People have said that Oljato means starlight on the waters.
Someone made a suggestion that they call it Oljato, which is starlight on the waters, is the meaning, the Indian meaning of it.
Now, just to clarify, the principal benefactor of the camp, Lucy and Ruth Stern. Stern is German for star.
One of the executive board or council committeemen had known of the name and thought it was very appropriate.
Oljato or Oljato, as the Navajo say, is actually moonlight on the water.
We have always called it starlight on the water, and we were told that no, that isn't correct. The real meaning is moonlight on the water.
So, sorry to bust your bubble there.
Lucy Stern was part of donating to the camp, Stern being the German name for star, and therefore we adopted starlight on the water because of moonlight on the water.
Moonlight on the water.
Starlight on the water.
Once in a while, the group gets back together. There'll be reunions. 50th anniversary or coming up 75th anniversary. But there's also other get-togethers that happen. In the 70s and 80s when we built a real camaraderie there, there's a very close group that stayed together through all these years.
These people that are here were staff members at Camp Oljato. Most of them were hired when they were teenagers. They are in their 50s and 60s, and they are here with their spouses and their children.
We come up and over the last 30 years or so have met pretty much every year.
And now all our kids have grown up together and our kids are really close.
We spent a long weekend telling the same stories over and over again and creating some new ones.
It's an ever-expanding circle of friends. Even some of the kids have then gone on to Camp Oljato to be staff members and or to attend camp with their troops.
When I come here and see them together, reminiscing and talking about the old days that they were at Camp Oljato, this is one of the benefits that I consider I had in my career as professional scouter.
Thursday evening is pretty much our best meal of the week. It's steaks cooked in our Scoutmaster barbecue area. It's put on by the adult leaders, and they're cooking 400 steaks for all of their troops.
Okay, one more veggie burger. Where's Scott?
One of the things I recognize is it's not just Pacific Skyline Council that comes up here. We get multiple troops from Nevada, Southern California, all around.
I'd recommend coming to Camp Oljato, and I think it's a great place to come that's different from some of the other camps. And any of the troops that come up are going to work on merit badges and accomplish things and do lots of service projects. It's a good experience to come to Oljato.
From there, we move on to a lot of exciting programming in the evening.
Hurrah for the berry, hurrah for the lead, hurrah for the teacher who didn't get a party.
There are 4 major campfire programs. The opening campfire is an opportunity for the staff to introduce themselves to the entire camp in a fun, exciting manner. The second campfire of the week is what's been called the Oljato Song Fest, a long-time tradition, and it's basically a campfire with nothing but songs, a few skits thrown in and there for some variety.
Camp staff had different specialties of songs that they were particularly good at.
Well, I would say without question, my favorite song is The Cannibal King.
Cannibal King.
Don't ask me to sing it.
A deep and wide one that kind of gets movements going.
Johnny Jacob Schickelheimer-Schmidt.
Little Rabbit Frou-Frou.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Don't ask me to sing it.
The campfire experience as a scoutmaster coming up with a troop, there's certain things that you pull back and you're like, oh, they're still doing that song. That's great. And then they're sort of like, oh, they're still doing that song.
Probably the favorite skit for me to perform. Eric Bloom and I used to do Samurai Scout.
Moo Moo.
Yes.
And he said, you know what?
Doug Aiken and what was it, a horse head?
The Royal Order of the Flushes, that's certainly memorable.
Dusty Dust Rats.
Pretty darn dusty.
Yep. Moo Moo. Moo Moo Moo. And every time they moved or tipped their hats, dirt would fall off in one direction or another.
All right,
I ain't got the money for the mortgage on the cow. And sometimes all in unison. It was priceless.
We never got any better.
Yeah.
Our talent level has not improved with age.
It's all around me, it's all around me! My belts!
Many a campfire would end with the waning campfire light with the legend of the bomber in the bottom of the lake.
A B-24 bomber was doing training exercises and it was blizzarding and they ended up having to do a emergency landing.
How the bomber would enter the lake and the ice cutting through the cockpit, killing the pilot and crew instantly.
A piece of ice sheared the fuselage off and severed the heads of the pilots.
And the lake froze over within a few days and no evidence of a crash landing was ever seen.
A crack in the dam. In the 1950s, they lowered the lake water, and up through the water came a tail section of this plane. And so they were able to find the bodies, perfectly preserved, still strapped into the plane, except that the heads were missing.
And the crew members may still be out wandering around the hills of Oljato, looking, searching.
So if you're out there fishing in Huntington Lake, and you get a snag?
Boy, that sent, I'm sure, many a young tenderfoot scout hiding.
And so kids would just go crazy. And, you'd see literally people lift off their bench around the campfire. And then we'd send them back to their campsites to have a relaxing evening.
This campfire really was an accumulation of everything that happened. That all the troops come together at once. It's a great way to really end the nights.
And it's a lot of activity. And then you start to kind of slow things down, and then we'd sing the Oljato hymn.
The staff comes down singing the Oljato hymn. It's a wonderful reminder of the accumulation of the week and the deeper meanings of camp and life.
And the staff are all up together, we kind of got our arms locked together, we're singing the song, and the scouts are singing also. And it became a real thread through all the summers.
Camp Oljato is special to Troop 57. Here we are, we're meeting at Lucy Stern's building. The most notable feature of the main meeting room at the Lucy Stern Scout House is there's a mural of Camp Oljato covering one entire wall. It's a nice reminder of where we go. So we kind of view it as something we should cherish and help preserve.
Lucy Stern gave us money for scouting, I would feel good if Lucy would smile down and say, "Well done."
It's the intention of the council to continue to be able to offer quality programs and camping experiences to youth for another 75 years, and we continue to invest back into the property each year with cleanup projects, remodeling, and adding new structures. We're always looking for volunteers, donors, supporters, anyone that thinks they can help us make a difference in improving the facilities and offering time, treasure, and talent, as we always say, always welcome and needed.
When you're set in beautiful surroundings of Huntington Lake and the Sierras, with a bunch of friends surrounding you and all the lessons that you're learning during the day and the campfires at night, very easy for you to start to get a sense of yourself and a sense of your soul and a sense of your own being in life.
It's a place where multi-generations come now. You see that smile on their face when they arrive, and you see them on their way out calling to you by name and saying, "I'm going to see you next year," or better yet, they say, "I'm going to be on staff next year." And they mean it.
I just love the peacefulness up there. It's so serene and so pretty, and you're out in the wilderness. There isn't any phones, and there isn't any technology mostly, and you're just kind of out there, and it's beautiful.
Moonlit nights and starlit waters, campfires friendly glow, comradeships and friendships lasting here at Oljato. Sing the song and send it skyward, booming through the pines. Hail the